Hi everybody. Today I'm gonna show you how to make a tool to center your room tags in the middle of your rooms. Let's go to Revit and have a look. This is a little project that I prepared, and this is gonna be enough. There are just 3 rooms and 3 room tags. If you're gonna go to EF Tutor, I have already prepared a button right here, which is gonna be in this dev diary pull down menu once we finished. If you're gonna hold Alt and click on the button, we're gonna open its location, which is right here, and then we can open the script and have a look inside. Inside is the same as usual. There is some information about the button, there are imports of our Revit DB classes, and a few variables. And first of all, let's try to get room tags visible in our active view. I'm gonna go to variables and write here elements. Then we're gonna create a variable called all room tags. And as usual, we're gonna use filtered element collector, provide doc. And if you want to get elements from a specific view, we need to provide second element as active view, and it has to be ID. Then same as usually, of category, built-in category, room tags, where element is not element type, and then 2 elements. And let's start printing them. For tag in all room tags, I'm gonna print tag. This is just to make sure that we haven't misspelled anything. Because very often I misspell this one, because sometimes I write element type and sometimes I write type element. So we're gonna go to Revit, click on it, and we're getting our room tags. So far so good. So let's look inside of our room tag to get an understanding what can we do. I'm gonna open add-ins tab, and then there is Revit Lookup. We can drag it on the screen so we don't have to come here anymore. And then click and snoop current selection. Here are all the properties and methods available. Right here you can see that there is a property called location, and inside of it there is a point. We can use this point to get the current location, or we can also set a new one. Then if you're gonna scroll down, there is a property called room, so we can get associated room with this tag. And this is gonna simplify things for us a lot. And if you're gonna look inside of the room, it also has location, and in the location there is a point. So we can change them at the same time. So let's go and get our room and our points. So room equals tag room, and then point of the room is room location point. And point of the tag is room location point. It's the same. I'm gonna print both of them just to see the values that we are getting. I'm gonna go to Revit, then in EF Tutor, I'm gonna click on this button, and it tells me that attribute error. It doesn't have the attribute called point because I have misspelled it. That's alright. We're gonna remove this H and try it again. And now you can see we're getting a bunch of XYZ points. What I was thinking about that we can get the bounding box of our room, which is gonna be looking something like this. And then we need to calculate the middle point, which is gonna be this point right here. You know what, let me actually make some point in there, like this. So we can calculate this middle point using bounding box minimum point and maximum point. For those of you who don't know, the bottom left point is considered the bounding box minimum point, and the top right point is usually bounding box maximum point. And to get this middle point here in the middle, we can just simply take the minimum point, add it to the bounding box of maximum point, and divide this whole thing by 2. And this little formula is gonna return us the middle point of the bounding box. Let's go to PyCharm and code it. I don't think we're gonna need any of these points. I just showed it to you where to get them. So we need to get room bounding box. And to get it, we have to say room. There's a method called get bounding box. And as an argument, it takes the view from where we wanna get the bounding box. So we're gonna use again doc active view. This should return us the bounding box. And then we can get the room center point, which is gonna be the formula that I showed you earlier. We're gonna take the minimum point, add it with the maximum point, and divide it by 2. Let's make a comment here and call it room data. And now once we have this point, we can actually go and set this point to the tag in the room center locations. So I'm gonna write move to center, then it was room location point equals room center, and then the same we're gonna do for the tag. And since we are trying to modify our Revit project, we need to create a transaction. So somewhere here I'm gonna write with transaction, then it takes document and then the name of our change. Usually I use the name of my button. Then we can say st. Then we need to move everything inside of it, and we need to start and commit our transaction. And the changes have to be in between these 2 statements. So I'm gonna move it on the bottom. So let's go to Revit, and then in EF Tutor tab, we're gonna click on this button. And you can see that it moved the room center and the tag right in the middle. This is good, but we are far from being finished. First of all, let's clear it up. So we remove all the text in the way. Now, let's imagine that I have this room like this, and this room right here is gonna have a little room in the middle. So I'm gonna move it out. So if I'm gonna run the script right now, this middle point is gonna stay where it is, but the problem is it's outside of room boundaries. So it will try to move the tag and room outside of its current boundaries. And same is gonna happen for this room here, because the bounding box, it's always square, which means we're gonna get this bounding box. And then when we're gonna look for the middle point, it's gonna be somewhere here. And then this is gonna be the middle point. So if I'm gonna run it, this room is gonna jump in this place, and this room is gonna jump in this place. And normally this is not what we want. So let's click on it, and you can see rooms completely moved, and this is not good. I'm gonna go back. Let's open Revit API docs and have a look. I'm gonna go for version 2021 and look for class of rooms. I'm gonna zoom in. In here, if we're gonna go and look in methods, there are special room methods, which is Eastpoint in room. We just need to provide a point, and then it's going to determine if a point lies within the volume of the room. And we can use this method to actually make sure that before we're moving the room, that this new point is actually inside of the existing room. I'm going to come right here and then say move to center if possible. And then we're going to write if room is point in room, we're going to provide room center point, and then we're going to move it. Which means that if I'm going to go back to Revit, let's move it all around. And if I'm going to click on it, you can see that this room has adjusted, but these two rooms stayed the same, because otherwise we're going to move them outside of its boundaries. So it's better keep them where they are. But now we can think about how can we adjust this room tag so they're much better. What I was thinking about is that we can take the outlines of our rooms, and then we're going to iterate through the segments, and we're going to find the longest segment possible. I think in this case it's going to be this one on the right. Then we can get the middle point of this segment, which is going to be somewhere here. And then we're going to go to the side some fixed distance like 30 or 50 centimeters. And then this is going to be our point. And then it means that it's going to be somewhere here. 30 is not enough. Let's make it more like 50. I don't know. Yeah, 50 is going to be better. And in this case, we're actually going to get two outlines of the room, because there's one outer outline and inner outline. Let's select these two rooms and have a look inside. Click on Revit Lookup, Snoop Current Selection. Then inside of it, we should look for a method called getBoundarySegments. For this room, if I click, I'm getting a list, then I'm getting another list, and inside of it, you can see that there are boundary segments. And let's do the same for the second room. I'm gonna scroll down, select getBoundarySegments. There is a list, and now we can see that there are two lists, because the first list contains outer lines of the room, and the second list contains inner lines of the room. And it can be more than two. And inside of it, obviously, it's just a few segments. And also notice here that for some reason, I have 5 boundary segments here. This outer one has 4, and inner one also has 4. I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes even the straight line can be cut into segments in rooms. So remember the name of this method, getBoundarySegments. Let's go and get it. Else, find another location. I'm gonna say room segments equals room getBoundarySegments. And if I'm gonna open Revit API and look in the methods for getBoundarySegments, I can see that it takes special element boundary options. In most cases, you can just copy these options and just insert it inside and make a call of it. And this is gonna give you default values for these options. I think this is gonna be enough for us. Actually, just now I realized that I forgot to zoom in. I'm sorry for this, but it is what it is. And let's continue. I made a mistake here. This is actually supposed to be room boundaries. Then room segments is gonna be each list inside of list of room boundaries. So I'm gonna take the first list in there. So far in my practice, the first list is usually the outer outline of your room. So this is exactly what we want. And then we're gonna try to find the longest curve. We're gonna say length equals to 0 and longest curve equals to none. Then we're gonna iterate through all the segments. For segment in room segments. Let's go back to Revit and have a look what can we do with our segments. So select a room, Snoop Current Selection, look for the method getBoundarySegments, go to the list, go to the next list, and then in here there are boundary segments. And there is a method called getCurve. Once we get the curve, we will get access to the length parameter, maybe something else. So let's write it, curve equals segment getCurve. And then we're gonna make a test. If curve length is more than current length, then the longest curve is gonna equal curve. And the length that we are tracking is gonna equal to the current length. So with this, we're just gonna iterate for all the segments, look at their length, and the largest length is gonna end up being the longest curve variable. Let's just print the longest curve or something, just to make sure that we haven't misspelled anything in here. I'm gonna go back to Revit, close all of this, and in EFTutor, I'm gonna click on this button. Line object has no attribute length. This is because I misspelled it as usual. And I think it's spelled this. And same is gonna be here. So let's go back and try it again. And now I can see we're getting 2 lines. The reason it's only 2 because this one, it's getting the center point and it's inside of the room. So this is okay. But these 2 coming outside and we're searching only for these rooms. Let's get rid of all of these points and lines so it's a little bit more clear. So you saw that we are getting two segments. I'm just gonna imagine that we are getting these two. Now what we need to do is get the middle point, and it's actually gonna be the same formula as before, but this time instead of boundary box minimum and maximum point, we're gonna use the line start and line end points. To get the points, we're gonna look in Revit API, and there is one method that allows us to easily get it. But the next issue is gonna be that we need to make offset in the right direction. In this case, it's gonna be to the left. And for example, if instead it was this wall and not that one, then in here we would have to move to the right, because to the left we would travel outside of our room boundary. The way we're gonna do this, we're gonna hypothetically create 4 points, one to the left, one to the right, one to the top, and one to the bottom, which means that we're gonna get this point something like this, and then we'll make some checks to see which point is actually inside, and we're gonna go through all of this when it comes. So the first point is get start and end points. I'm gonna go to Revit API. In here, let's look at the line class. Then in line class, go to methods and just scroll through and see what's possible. In here, I can see that there is get endpoint, and this is something that I want. Click on it. It tells me here, returns 3D point at the start or end of the curve, depending on the index. And if I'm gonna scroll down to parameters, it says that here, index 0 for start and 1 for the end of the curve. Let's create a comment, call it get middle point on curve. We don't need this print statement anymore. So point start equals longest curve, it was get end point, and then 0 for start, and then we're gonna make 1 for end. And I want to keep it aligned. So point center is gonna equal to, same as before, point start plus point end divided by 2. Let's go and run our tool to make sure that we haven't made any typos, as I usually do. Go to EF tutor and click on this button. We're getting 2 points. This is good. So now we already have this point. The next step is to create these 4 points. As far as I know, we cannot take the point and modify its parameters, but we can read these parameters and create a new point by using XYZ class. So what I'm gonna do is just type here all these points. Point up equals XYZ, then point down equals XYZ, point right equals XYZ, and the same for point left. Now inside of this class, we need to provide parameters for X, Y, and Z. So to do this, I'm gonna take this point center, and actually I'm gonna rename it a little so it's a little bit shorter, point mid. So it's gonna be point mid X, point mid Y, and point mid Z. And it's gonna be the same for down, for right, and left. Now these are duplicates of the point, and now we can modify and start adding values so it goes up, down, right, or left. Before this, somewhere on the top, let's say we're gonna go to variables and create here some controls. We're gonna create a step and give it a value of 5. Remember that internal units of Revit are in imperial units, so I believe this is gonna be 5 feet. And now we're gonna add this step somewhere. So in case of up, I'm gonna add it to the Y. In case of down, I'm gonna subtract it from the Y. To the right, we want to add it, and to the left, we're gonna remove it. Now I'm just gonna align all of this so it's easier to read. Down here, you can easily see that they all have the same Z coordinate. These two have the same Y coordinates, and this one have changes. This one has plus, this one has minus, and the same here. Just a little bit easier to read it. So let's go back to Revit and actually think about it. First, we can check which of these points are inside of our room with the same Eastpoint in room method. But the problem is this 3 is gonna return true, and this is gonna return false because this is the only point coming outside. But we still can use it. We just need to make these checks in pairs. So first we're gonna check left and right. If both of these points are inside of the room, then this is the wrong axis, and in this case only one point is inside and the other is outside. And it means that this point is correct. And these 2 points, they're gonna return that both of them are inside of our room, and then it means that this is the wrong point we are using. Let's try to come to code and write it somehow so it's understandable. So I'm gonna write move on x-axis and then move on y-axis. So we're gonna start making checks. We just need to combine 2 of them. I'm gonna write if room is point in room point up and point in room point down, then this is gonna be axis y is wrong. Then I'm just gonna copy the same thing for y-axis and change it to right and left. And this is gonna say that then axis x is wrong. And then we can say else move point on y-axis. And then in here I'm gonna write else print point on x-axis. Okay, let's just go inside and we're gonna run it and see. So for one of these rooms it tells me axis y is wrong, move point on y-axis. I definitely misspelled something. It actually has to be y and x, because if this happens, then y is wrong, and otherwise y is correct. And if this happens, x is wrong, and otherwise it's correct. So I got a little bit confused. So if I'm gonna click on it, it's gonna tell us axis y is wrong, move point on x-axis for both of them, which means that probably these are the lines it's actually getting. I don't want to make if and else statement, so I'm just gonna combine. I'm gonna say if not these two statements together, then we're just gonna move point on x. And then same as here, if not, and then we're gonna combine these two together. So we can go back, click on it, and you can see move point on x-axis for both of them, which means that we have to move right or left. The next step is simple, because now that we know that we need to choose between these 2 points, we're just gonna check, is this point inside? If yes, then move the room tag there. Or if we're gonna start with this point, is it inside? It's gonna return false, and then automatically we're gonna go to the next point. So inside of it, we're gonna say, I'm gonna copy this, and we can write if point up is inside. I'm gonna put the pass now, but we're gonna write move it up, and then if room isn't point down, then we're gonna move it down. This pass statement just doesn't do anything. It's kind of placeholder for now. And then we're gonna do the same for x-axis. I'm gonna remove these print statements because we don't need them anymore. And we're gonna say this one is gonna be to the right and the other one is gonna be left. So the only thing that left is actually move the points. And if we're gonna go somewhere up, you can see that we moved it already here. Since we need to place it in 4 different places, I don't want to copy and paste these 2 lines. Instead, I'm just gonna go up and create a function. Move room and tag. Then we're gonna provide new point. And I'm gonna make a docstring. I'm gonna write function to move both room and tag locations. And the new point is XYZ point. So now we can come and take this one, paste it inside, and replace new point here. And now we can use this function everywhere, including here. But be aware that room and tag is not part of this function. So if they are globally available, then it's gonna take it, but otherwise you're gonna get an error. Okay, now we can say it here. Move room and tag up. Then we're gonna move room and tag down. In here we're gonna move room and tag right. And finally we're gonna move room and tag to the left. So before we're gonna go to Revit and run, let's have a look what's happening in our script. Here on the top we are getting all of the room tags visible in view. We set up the control for our offset. Then we created a function to move our room and tag location so we don't have to copy them all the time. Then we created transaction, we started transaction, we iterate through all the room tags. We're getting the room, we're getting room boundary, then we're getting the room center point. If this new center point is inside of room boundaries, then we're gonna move it. Otherwise, we're gonna look for another location. We're gonna get all boundaries. Then from boundaries, we're gonna take the first list, which is usually outer outline. Then we're gonna go and iterate through the list and try to get the longest segment. Once we have the longest segment, we're gonna get the start point and end point. Then we're gonna calculate the middle point. Then we're going to create 4 artificial points, up, down, left, and right, by adding our offset. And then finally, we're gonna make a few if statements. First, we're gonna test the axis. Are we gonna move on x-axis or are we gonna move on y-axis? And then one of them evaluate to true. You can go inside and have a look. Is it gonna be point up or is it gonna be point down? And eventually it's gonna move it. One thing is that here I'm gonna add elif. So in case it's gonna go through this code and this is gonna be enough, it's not gonna execute this part. So let's go back to Revit and actually have a look. Does it work or not? So the moment of truth. It worked for this button, but not for that one, which is a little weird. And I think the problem is that our offset is way too far, because this looks way too little. So I think we're actually moving like 1.5 meters. So let's go back and try to adjust our offset. I'm gonna set it to 2. And we're gonna run it again. But this time it worked. So what happened is that probably it was this line that it got it. And then with the offset, it ended up in this another room boundary. And because we're making this check that if point is inside of the room and only then we move it, because of this, it doesn't move this point. So I think this script can be improved even further. So we're gonna take this longest segment, try to get the point if all of these points is still outside. Then we can take another segment. Maybe we try it here, or maybe we try there. So eventually we're gonna find a point where we can place it. Let's just try to drag it around and see. Click on it, it works. Now I'm gonna drag it up. And this is how we're gonna make a tool to align your room tags in the center of the wall, or if this is not possible, we're gonna try to find another position. I hope this was helpful to you and you learned something new about Revit API or Python. My name is Eric Fritz, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.